The Time Traveler's Wife on HBO Max is just not getting better. This is the worst episode yet. Here's my recap of The Time Traveler's Wife Season 1, Episode 3. So Claire's a senior citizen. The makeup she's wearing in this episode was underwhelming, specifically in the scene where she's supposed to be a senior citizen. If not for the wrinkles, you wouldn't have even known that this timeline was from her later years. Her voice inflections, incidentally, sounded like Mandy Moore's character from This Is Us, Rebecca. The accent, the slight lisp, it was... So Claire's sitting before camera, chronicling various times she waited for Henry and met up with him. Sometimes as a child, but mostly when she's 16. So kind of coming of age. And he lies about their future. So she continually questions if she's the Claire that marries him, and he lies. But worst of all is that she calls his lie decent. So she says that he's a decent man for lying because she was underage and he didn't want to give her the impression that maybe that she has to wait on him until she's in her mid-20s. Listen. Well, Henry gives Claire all these scheduled days that he'll return, and she waits and counts the days to see him again. We get to know a little more about Claire's parents as she waits. Her mother is seemingly dealing with depression. Father is just too busy for the kids. And they do have a house worker who pays a little more attention to Claire than anyone else in the house, like her brother, busy with his video games. But Dad also hunts in the backyard in the middle of the night. One day he's hunting, the buckshots awaken Claire along with screams from Henry after being shot. She nearly gets shot herself by her father because, again, this is the middle of the night and she runs into the woods on their property and he points a gun at her. But when Claire turns 16, she comes onto 36-year-old Henry. She forces him to play a game of checkers for articles of his clothing, which Henry wins so he can get fully dressed. This week, the writers have made her appear promiscuous to excuse the implication that Henry's predatory. There's a larger love story of meeting your soulmate as a child, but this might have worked better, in my opinion. I'm no expert, but this might have worked better if Henry's younger variant spent time with Claire instead of 36-year-old Henry, because each week it gets cringier and cringier. Anyway, Claire's 16 and she's into boys, as it were. She attends a party with her classmates instead of meeting Henry on this one particular day where he's going to appear. So she kind of revolts, tired of waiting for him to show up. At this party, Claire is sexually assaulted by a jock from school, but refuses to tell Henry. And I mean, they milk these scenes for the second half of the episode. She gets her license and takes Henry on a joyride, knowing that she has a future and will survive anything at this point in her life. She drives in oncoming traffic, irresponsibly, careless that the other drivers and passengers could be killed by her recklessness. And The thing is that it's so self-centered because even if she knows she's going to survive this, she doesn't know the other people. These are innocent drivers and passengers on the road, and it's a busy. The scene is full of cars, and she knows that Henry survived a car crash from his youth when his mother died from an accident. Claire knows this. It's atrocious that she disregards this. Disregards his mom's death or dying from a car accident. I mean, it's just thoughtless. In this iteration of The Time Traveler's Wife, neither of these characters so far are worth rooting for. This was Claire's worst episode. And I know this isn't your typical love story, but there is nothing romantic about this. And I get this icky feeling that grooming is being romanticized here. Okay, so since Henry can time travel out of prison, out of anything, but specifically prison, if arrested, Claire asks him, goads him really, to kill the jock from her school that physically assaulted her and abused her. And so matter-of-factly, Henry agrees. But Claire calls it off eventually. Henry time travels away in the moment that he's trying to pay back this job. But Claire gets her friends from school to use a marker that Henry gave her and write their abuse on the jock as his punishment. I mean, this was not a good week for the Time Traveler's Wife. How can her character recover next week? Like, how can she be redeemed? You want to feel sad that she was assaulted in this way and she was abused in this way. But the antics make it felt uncomfortable because there was a larger message that could have played out, but the antics just was such a big distraction. I wish the creators of this series developed the series around adult Claire from 25 on, or even from 20 years on. This one is not playing out well on screen every week. I don't think it's cinematic anymore, this novel, or maybe it is, but this iteration of it just doesn't feel good. Or maybe they could have went back in time and allowed younger Henry to interact with Claire more. I know the book chronicles all of this time, but we're in different times in our lives and we see things differently now. In this era, that novel was released 20 years ago. We are more enlightened as a people now, and this narrative arc is a cringe fest. I don't know. If you stuck around this long, thank you so much. I certainly appreciate you. Please consider liking, commenting, sharing, and subscribing. And until next episode, peace.